also a board member of the U.S. chapter of the International Association of Art, the IAA-USA. Today, we are thrilled to share with you the first edition of a series of podcasts called Salon Conversations. They are named after our current location, which is the Salon, a glorified storage area in the GDCA gallery. And it will consist of a series of interviews and conversations with notable individuals, and they will be centered in and around art. Oh, what was that?
And there's some art speaking to us.
So I am super excited because we could not have a more perfect guest speaker to kick off our series than our first segment, than Rick Robinson. So this is Rick Robinson, and he is right in front of one of his incredible sculptures.
It's called The Awakening.
The Awakening. And Rick is an incredible artist who has distinguished himself not only in creating an iconic art brand, but also in managing to have a very successful parallel business career, the lessons of which he has impeccably integrated into his life and his career as an artist. And this he has agreed very generously to share with us tonight. So, hey, Rick Robinson.
Hey,
welcome.
I'm honored to be here, thank you, and it's my privilege to share.
Thank you so much. So when we were talking about the subjects, some of the things we wanted to pick your brain about,
sure.
You were kind of naming this chapter, How to Make Your Way as an Artist in America, Stories, Observations, and Lifer Lessons from Rick Robinson. So we realized later that lifer was actually a typo.
It was, but it worked. Right?
It worked because I really have to say, of all the people I know, you are a lifer when it comes to being an artist. You know, you are a consummate artist, and you have impeccably managed to, to commit every level, every element of your life to being an artist and what that means. So take me to the basics. What does that mean?
Well, there's, we have notes, so you'll see me looking at notes.
Me too.
When you think about being an artist in this country now, I'll do it through my story, obviously. First, this goes back to the 80s when I was in my early 20s. And I realized that we live in a consumer-based, capitalist construction. That's what we live in. And I remember hearing the statistic that half of the gross domestic product of the United States half of it was consumerism. Now 70% of it is consumerism. So it just showed me that this society that I was living in was not going to change for me. And I needed to find my way in it and find a way to support myself and create the means to be an artist in this world. And so it wasn't fighting it or being angry about it or trying to resist it or complain. It was like just dive in and surrender to it and find a way to make it work. And so the first thing that dawned on me was just setting up my life, right? How to set up your life to be an artist. And I know this sounds fundamental, but I've seen a lot of people who want to be an artist, who went to art school, who want to have a career as an artist, and they don't do this first thing first. And I made some notes here, but it's getting your living space right, having room to work, being ruthless about that. I mean, really prioritizing it. The first and most important thing is I have a place to work where, is that okay with the levels? Sort of.
The first and fundamental thing, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's fine. The first and foremost thing is just creating a place where you can work, where you have room to do it, you can make noise, you have the space, you have the ventilation, whatever it is you need. The other part is creating an income stream, like being able to take care of yourself to the level that you need to, and not bitching about it. Getting the job that you need to have and setting yourself up so you have the resources to make work and the room to make work. And then there's your friends and your social life and where you hang out and what you do. And that old quote, you are who you hang out with, rings true. And I see people spending time in areas that aren't really adding to their game. And I wonder why. It's like you say you want to be an artist, but are you?
Can I ask you what that means? I'm sure there are different ways in which individuals can add to their game. So is that something that I imagine you don't mean surround yourself only with other artists?
I think it's people that inspire you and raise the bar for you. That's what I'm getting at. It's not like trying to find people with money who want to buy your art,
Okay.
which is a cynical way of looking at it. And maybe there's some truth in that, but that's not really what I'm talking about. It's setting up your social realm so you're aspiring to the people you're with.
Yes.
They motivate you to do better. They lift you up.
Yes.
They reinforce what you're trying to do, and they also challenge you and challenge your work, and they're critical of what you're doing at times. So you're in this place that's going to incubate your opportunity and make the most of it. And the other piece of setting up your life for art is your personal life, your relationships. And I think it's okay to be alone a little bit. You've got to be selfish. And it's just unrealistic, in my view, again, this is my view, of saying, I'm going to find a job that gives me enough money to support myself and have a place I can live and make art and invest my extra money in that. Go without pleasant things like coffee every day in the morning for $7 so I can spend that on paint. Seriously.
Yeah.
And then also say I'm going to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a significant other, and I'm going to get married, and we're going to spend a lot of time doing stuff together, and we're going to have kids and a family, and you're not prioritizing your art. It's just that brutal and true.
Interesting.
And so that's really that's the first thing I always look at is what has happened in terms of setting up your life for being an artist. And conversely, when I see people lose their art or slowly walk away from it, it's because the facts are they prioritize other things.
Interesting.
And, you know, those are just the facts. An outside observer looking at the evidence would say, well, you've prioritized other things. You've left less time for art in your brain, in the day, in your soul. So of course you're not going to be able to realize that part of your life to the degree you would hope.
Interesting. Do you, now you happen to be in a space where your studio is also your living space.
It was like that for many years, not
It's not
in just the
anymore.
last couple of years.
Oh, okay.
But I still have my studio,
You
yes.
still have your studio. And I guess, how would you equate the two by saying, create a set schedule where you go to studio and prioritize it in that way, saying this set amount of time, as opposed to being
Fair
in
question.
it and
I mean, look, I lived in my studio for 30 years, and 90% of the space was studio, and 10% was sleeping. So the entire space was dedicated to supporting making art, collecting art, materials, supplies, whatever. Now at this stage of my life, and really even before I moved out of my studio, I felt like I could make art anywhere. And this, because I was trying to balance my business life, so I could create images on my phone and save them and use them later. So the whole world became my studio. But I think in the beginning, when you're really immersing to develop your voice and your technique and your creative patterns and the process you go through from inspiration to execution to final result, you've got to have a place. And it's got to be your sacred place and the most important place in the world to you. And if it's less than that, then you're fooling yourself to say I'm going to be an artist and make my life that way.
Right. And that's interesting because that ties into sort of your version or today's version of this, this romantic notion we used to have of Picasso or these artists that sort of abstain from the world and were just an art hermit basically. And unless you did that, you weren't a true artist. But it sounds like what you're saying is your dedication to the art is in discipline. It doesn't mean you can't also support yourself. You can't have, like you said, a stream of income and some earthly pleasures.
I think you can do both.
That's what.
And it goes back to the next thing, which is business isn't a bad word. Business isn't a bad word.
So that is, I think a lot of people are terrified, saying like if that it means I'd be, I'd quote, would be selling out. I've sold out if I'm not starving myself to death.
I think that's naive and silly.
Yeah.
Just flat out.
Yeah.
We live in a consumer-based capitalist construct. A gallery is a business. Anything buying and selling something is a business. I remember when I was going to school, and I was an art major and a marketing major together. And my business school friends thought art was not serious and artsy-fartsy, right? And my art friends thought business was evil. And I thought both were oversimplifying it completely, and there's no reason you can't do both. And the truth is, when you look at people who've gotten to the point where they realize their voice as an artist, they're producing work, there's this valid output from them that's successful frequently and well done and archival, and they keep their provenance and all that stuff, and they show up on time and they pay their taxes right. A lot of success as an artist or anything is just having your act together. And part of that is understanding the basics of business. And I think that's why sometimes galleries are able to exploit artists or take advantage of them, because they're afraid to address the business realities of any exchange of value and goods and services. And I can hear people cringing right now because I'm saying art is like a good and a service. But it is. And what I'm getting at is to not be afraid of just those pragmatic realities of the economic system we live in. It's to your advantage to understand that and understand contracts and understand when you drop off some work in a gallery, you should get a receipt for it. And understand to track your sales and ask for your money. It's yours, and you should get it when it's the right time to get it. And not be afraid of that. You'll be respected for it.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
When did you first discover those, and learn to integrate the business basics? And then, what are some of the other sort of business lessons that you felt were really, really helpful as an artist?
It kind of happened simultaneous for me. It's how I grew up. My father and my stepfather had their own business, so that was in the household. Right when I got out of school, I started working in the advertising world, in the billboard business as a salesperson, so contracts and transactions and agreements and all of those guardrails were in my life already. So when I started showing in galleries, which was about the same time, I just already had that expectation. And what I found is that sometimes I would get resistance from the gallery owners, like saying, well, you shouldn't be asking such specific questions. And then I realized, because you don't get asked that all the time. There's also, this sounds like such a marketing guy, but here it comes. There's an oversupply of artists.
Okay.
The distribution channel for art is bottlenecked at the gallery level. There's way more artists producing way more art than ever is going to be sold through the gallery system. And that's why you've seen in the last decade other means, art walks and things like that, and the art fairs, which is still galleries just all in one spot. They're trying to do it online, which isn't really working yet, because it's such a visceral, personal experience to go see a piece of fine art and want it in your home and things like that. But there are way more artists and magnitudes more art produced than there is the channel and a place for it to be bought.
So how does one distinguish oneself as an artist? What would you recommend? How does one?
I don't know. I think that goes back to finding your voice. I mean, you can't try to please people.
Okay.
When you're creating work in the early part of your process and your growth and development, I believe that a lot of time should be spent finding your voice within you. And I think as an artist, that's your number one obligation, is uncover that. What is your message, the materials you use, the look and feel. We all have a voice. We all have that distinct style, personality, aesthetic, topic. Even if the materials change, there's still usually a subject matter or a vein or a thread that holds it together. And I think so much work needs to be done finding that. And it takes time. And it's painful. And it means loss of sleep. And it means not doing other things. It means prioritizing that ruthlessly. And really, in my view, it happens like in your early 30s. It starts to really come out and get refined.
Can I go back to that
Yeah.
process? Like imagine I'm an art student and I've amassed a lot of technique, but I have no idea where to begin to I mean, maybe like to find like what is my message, or like does it begin by differentiating yourself by looking at what is around you, or is that, do you have to have on blinders and just say what is the most
Well, I
difficult?
mean, look, it's different for everybody, but I can tell you what it's not, which
Right.
like I said earlier, it's not like trying to write the hit song.
Right.
It's not because you're trying to please people. And I think we all go through those steps in these phases where you're imitating. Everybody has their abstract period. Everybody has their Rothko moment. Everybody has their assemblage period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still life when you're a kid. You can illustrate, so you know your aunt wants you to draw something. I mean, we all go through these phases. But at some point, it starts to emerge what appeals to you, what seems effortless for you, the work you'll fight for. You know, the work that you feel vulnerable doing. That's where you should go. When you feel naked and vulnerable and afraid, and maybe I shouldn't do this, and will people really like this, then you're getting somewhere, because I think your authenticity is starting to come out.
Wow.
And people will see that, and they'll feel that, and they'll want some of it, because it's honest, you know. And so when you get vulnerable, keep going.
Oh, I love that.
Keep going. That's what I've seen and learned.
Yeah.
And when I see it go the other way, when it's like when I see people sort of just imitating what they see and trying to perfect and refine somebody else's inspiration, it can be cool, but it starts to feel a little flat. It is an example. In the last decade, a lot of the motifs and sensibility of street art has emerged as a common vernacular. You see it in advertising now everywhere, and in fashion. And a lot of it just feels flat.
Got it.
You know, because they're just imitating a genre.
Yeah.
Right? But when I see that work, I always ask myself, well, where's the artist? This is just graphic design. Like, where's the work? Where is that moment that stops me in my tracks and says, hey, wait a minute. Somebody's soul is like bleeding in front of me in this piece of work, and I need to understand this more. There's intrigue, there's dialogue there, there's some sort of fearlessness going on, and you know, anyway, yeah, you got me.
Do you mind if I link in here? You once told me an amazing story of one of your first, I think it was your first solo show. And to that point of, you know, do the thing, like really find your voice, really find that thing. And I'm not sure, is this an okay place to tell that story, or should I get back to that later?
Tell me the story.
The Richard Godfrey story.
Oh gosh, yes. That was probably in the early days, not my first solo show, but in the first 10. Yeah. And I had a show coming. I had plenty of time in front of me to get it done. And I was partying a lot. So much so that the gallery owner was worried. Like, Rick, where's Rick's work? You know, it's a week or two before the opening and we haven't seen anything, and like, what the hell is going on? So Richard Godfrey, a very well-known downtown LA artist and a mentor to me and many, was sent over to do a studio visit. It was like a Saturday, so he was going to come over around noon. And I knew it was coming for several days. So of course we partied all night. In fact, I made everybody leave around 11 a.m. and I was a wreck. And my studio is long and narrow. It's 15 feet wide by 50 feet deep, the downstairs place where I did the work. I lived upstairs. And so Richard comes in. I'm a disaster. And I've got attitude, and I haven't slept, and I'm smoking a cigarette, and there's all the detritus and evidence of the night before. And my process at the time was to cut shapes out of cardboard. I do these silhouettes inspired by primitive shapes called primitive pop, and they eventually get cut out of steel and clean on a wall and just rest off the wall and drop a shadow. In any case, the process at that time was to create these shapes out of cardboard and paper and things so I could get the silhouette. And I would hang them on my wall as if it was like the show.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got that right, then it was just labor really to cut it out of steel and finish it and so on. So I had it lined up. It was terrible. It was just imitations of other things. There was no theme, there was no nothing. And Richard saw it, looked at it, didn't say much. I was going on and on and on. He walked outside quietly, grabbed a dumpster, came into my studio and started taking the work off the walls and throwing it in the trash. And I finally started raising my voice, hey, what are you doing? Like, stop that. And I was getting mad. And to know Richard then, he was a fierce guy, a little guy, but a fierce guy, and somebody who I was intimidated by him as an artist because he was so gifted and powerful, and he was just a scary guy sometimes. So I'm coming at him, and he's like, hey, fuck you. If you think this work is so great, dig it out of the trash. And then he lectured me about respecting the walls. He was like, look, you're this billboard guy, you're starting to get shows, and we all fought for this, and you're being a dilettante, essentially. Respect the walls. And how many hundreds of people every year in Los Angeles graduate with a BFA or an MFA, and all are seeing themselves as getting shows. It's like college football players all think they're going to go to the NFL. And look in the LA Weekly, how many really have a show? How many are even in a group show? And you're in this now, and you're not respecting the walls. And basically, go fuck yourself.
Wow.
And he left. And that was a turning point in many ways. I thought, okay, respect the walls.
Yeah.
And whatever I put up there, I need to be willing to fight for it.
There you go.
And I was getting a little bit intoxicated with my own self at that time. I think he straightened me up.
That's such an amazing story. And again, it ties back into everything else you said about, like, what is your truth? What is finding your voice? What is really something? And ultimately getting to that you're willing to fight for. And so thank you so much. I love that story. I'm really glad I wasn't in your position to have to then come up with it. But
I recall just sort of shaking my head and thanking him immediately. And then it cleared everything, and I just got to work.
Right, but I guess what I'm going to is then I'm always fascinated with that because I'm not an artist. I don't really understand that moment of how out of that moment of then nothingness do you find the impetus or the bolt of lightning, the truth.
You know what?
It just
I think what happens is you surrender. You have to surrender to it. Let it in. It's not you. It's not your ego. And that was something else that Rich and I talked about frequently. There is this external motivation or cognition or deadline or whatever it is that says, oh, I have to make work, I have a show coming, or I've said I'm an artist, so I better be making art, or hey, I saw something today and it triggered other memories, and now I'm going to get to work. Because if we're not working and creating work, we feel like we're cheating a little bit and we're playing hooky. Although we need times of incubation and recovery, too much time passes and you haven't made new work, you're sloughing, you're dogging it, right? You're not on the job. And so when you start creating a piece or a series of pieces, there's always this point where the work takes over and you're the servant. And that's when you're really into it, right? That's when the magic is happening, I believe. Now, if your ego jumps back in, that's when you go too far and fuck it up. But there's this relationship where you surrender to the inspiration, you surrender to the idea, and you serve the work. And then when it's done, ideally, it's just like butter. It's done.
Wow.
You're off the clock.
Oh, that's great. So do you have that point where the work tells you it's finished?
I certainly sense that. And there's times when, and this is an old advertising thing, and somebody taught me, like, hey Rick, sometimes you should just take your idea out in the alley and shoot it. Because sometimes, you start things and you're trying to get it there and it's just not getting there. So just let it go. And I have a big flat file drawer full of sketches of possible ideas and things that I always thought should be shows. Like, oh, there's 20 pieces in this series. And they're still sitting in my flat file. And it's just, like, it's telling me it's not a show.
Interesting.
It's not. Now, it could be one day, or that whole, this has happened many times, where I thought I had a whole series. Like, oh, there's 20, 30 pieces. This fills a room. This is a solo show, this idea. And then it sits there. And then I realize, nah, it's one piece. It's not a whole show.
Yeah.
It's like a comedian making the same joke 20 times. Right? No, tell it once.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is.
That's great. So I remember one of the conversations we had. I was so impressed again with your kind of ability to see the long game and the gestalt of a career, and you talked about something about like having an understanding or an idea from the beginning of what you want. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure.
Like I think what you said, what you called it back then, was be clear about what it is that you want, and you had all these different categories, these different styles of career.
The world according to our own views, right? And you know, luckily I wasn't really starting to show a lot until I got into my early 30s. So I'd seen some things.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed was that a lot of people went into the life of being an artist and wanting to, artist in quotes, and wanting to show their work. And there was this big disconnect between their expectations and what reality was. Mm-hmm. And not only what reality was in the sense of what was likely possible, but what they were doing to try to reach their goals. You know, I'm going to be an art star, and all they're doing is partying. It's like, well, no, you're not. You know, it's like saying I'm going to be a chef and then never cooking. Right? Like, when's that going to happen? The other thing I noticed was that those who sustained the work, those who kept making work and kept showing and developed a body of work over time that was recognizable, who had lived up to their I think, obligation and duty as an artist, and realized themselves as an artist, that there were characteristic and traits in that, and behavior patterns. And none of it was about the work. It was about their lifestyle and dedication and making room for the work and having their shit together and doing their taxes right, showing up on time and using good archival material. They were approaching it seriously. Mm-hmm. So it dawned on me that as people would come to me and say, hey, my niece wants to go to art school, can you talk to this person? And so my first question would be like, what do you want out of this? You know, and do you want to be an art star? Okay, well, you have a better chance of being a rock star. But if you want to be an art star, here's what you do. Like, go to it. Be visible where the money is. You know, create your personality. Look at others who have been and try to mimic that. Learn about Madonna, one of the most ruthless people on the planet, was able to realize her dream. I mean, those are the traits, you know, that ruthless selfishness almost towards their craft and their career. And realize that the odds are very against you not to achieve that, but you know that walking in, you haven't blinded yourself or fooled yourself, and go for it, and die for it. Like, give it everything you've got. Or just be self-indulgent, do whatever you want, be loose and wild with it, party all the time, but don't get pissed off if you don't get shows and have a sustainable career, because you're not doing anything to support that. Yeah. So, like, how dare you get all whiny and complain to me about, oh, I can't get a show and nobody respects me and I should be famous and this and that. Well, you haven't done shit to do that. Right? So understand what you want from it. And if what you want from it is to always make art, always be in shows, have a documented career, have it legitimate on your tombstone that you were an artist, you know, in this consumer-based capitalist construct that we live in, then do the things that get you there. Have your act together, like I just described before. And so I think just having that helpful expectation will just eliminate some grief and also give you a better chance of realizing which one of those you want to go for.
Yeah.
But going eyes wide open. The thing that I would rail against, which you can sense from my narrative here, is that wanting one thing and doing another.
Right.
Then that's just poppycock. You're just not serious.
Right, which also goes into the subject of lifestyle, I guess, and the artist persona, or you had a great phrase. I'll have to look at it. You said live the life and not the lifestyle.
Yeah, look.
I love that.
Drugs and booze will kill you.
Yeah.
It will, and or diminish you to the point where you might be better off dead anyway. I've seen that, and that's almost worse. Just ghosted, skills diminished, and just not much left. And so it's not a movie. You can all watch Basquiat. Great movie. Schnabel did a good job on that movie. And you see it in popular culture all the time, how artists are portrayed.
Right.
But that's not true. At least for the ones who really succeed as an artist. Most of the time, they're very hardworking people. It's a full-time job and then some. They're very serious about what they do. They're tough negotiators. They fight for their independence. They fight for their money. They exclude other things in their life, other pleasures, so they can focus on their art. And that's not what you see in movies. So don't let the lifestyle take over. It's live the life, being an artist, not the representation we see in popular culture.
Right.
And I think some of that has shifted really in the last decade, because art is it's seen more business-like in some ways. The mainstream sees it as more serious and less frivolous than maybe it was seen before by the broader mainstream, not the more sophisticated piece of culture in society. So, I've seen so many of my friends die young, or hurt themselves, or diminish themselves, or just get taken over. Me included. Me included for a long part of my life, until I woke up at 48 and stopped. And that's a whole nother podcast, but the point is, it's got to be about the work.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't mean it's not okay to go party and cut loose and have fun with your friends and all that kind of stuff. But at some point, it can't take over. And I can remember something my mom said to me once. I was in the middle of it, deep in the cups. I went home for the holidays, and I was hungover, and I was a wreck. And she's like, how's work going? And I told her, blah, 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 blah. Ooh, look at me. She goes, oh, no, not that. I just thought you were a professional partier. Right?
Wow.
It's like, okay. Now, did that wake me up? No, it took several more years before I did the bullshit. But the point is, it was definitely a notice. So yeah, I just, I'm not trying to be a downer or have a big warning for people, but I do have a big warning. Like, if you're an artist and you can create these moments that inspire other people and move the world, which is what art does, that's a gift. And don't fuck it up by indulging yourself and killing yourself. That's all. Live the life, not the lifestyle.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing. One thing, again, I love all of your stories, and I was going to ask you a little bit of a personal story, because I found it so profound. It goes a little bit back to the question of when you talked about selfishness and the ruthlessly dedicating yourself to that it's okay to be alone a lot, and carving out that time. And I remember you told me a story that it was not by choice, but after a great personal tragedy, you suddenly found yourself in a not a vacuum, but in a space where you were very alone, and that you felt that catapulted you into also truly dedicating yourself to it? Is that did I?
Yeah, it's fair to
call
talk
that
about. I
correct?
mean, look, I was living with somebody I was in love, and she died in a car wreck, and it was sudden and tragic, and we were just apexing in our relationship, and you know, you're torn, and everybody has a story. We all go through personal tragedy. We all go through big moments of loss, and for me at the time, I'd been making art and I showed my art a little bit. But never really seriously. And the billboard business side of my life was more dominant. I still consider myself an artist, but maybe with a small a, and I was a little apologetic about it perhaps. And when Mishi died, it just stripped it all away. And now, look, I also went on a 20-year bender after that, but so I didn't deal with a lot of it well. And I was already abusing alcohol and drugs before she died, so I was on my way to that anyway. But what did happen was I felt like there was nothing that could hurt me anymore. And I wasn't going to hold back. And it was okay to be vulnerable. And these little shapes, this is what my art is. This is who I am. This is what I stand behind. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going for it. And come what may. Both in my art world and my professional life and business. And it was liberating in a way. There was also this sense that I didn't want to waste the pain.
Yeah.
And so that's really what happened. And it turned the corner for me. And it's amazing when you shift your energy with not a little bit, but all the way. Like leaving nothing behind you. No parachute, no net, just going. Then things start to happen. And that's when I met Sheena Niestamp-Brut. And her and Sabine Gebser, they have this little gallery in Venice Beach called Half a Dozen Rows. And they gave me a solo show. And it was pick of the week in the weekly, and we sold a bunch of work. And you know, I coined the phrase primitive pop for the pieces and started doing the steel, and off it went.
Wow.
You know, but I'd give credit's not the right word, but that tragic event in my life turned it and opened an opportunity as well. Just the double-edged sword. Right. I think we all go through that, and we all have our own crosses to bear. Right.
Well, it's interesting. It's the Buddhist principle that every tragedy is a gift.
If you let it be.
If you let it be.
And I wasn't as enlightened about it in that way. There was some anger.
Yeah.
It was more like, fuck it, I'm not going to waste this. Like, okay, this is what you're going to give me? Okay. Now I'm going to give it back.
Oh, wow.
You know, this is what you're going to see.
Yeah.
Like, no more hesitation. And it was adversarial almost in that way.
Wow. You're such an inspiration, and I just love your commitment to your life as an artist. You know, I really, like I said in my intros, is you're a consummate artist, and you, as you said, you know, you don't look back. You kind of just commit
I just
yourself
feel really
wholeheartedly.
lucky is what I feel.
Yeah.
So that's more than anything. Whew. You know, and just to finish on not looking back, I think that once you make that commitment, it's like taking the blood oath in the mafia or something. like you can't stop. I've seen so many people come out of the gate in their 20s, they go to art school or they don't or whatever. I'm an artist, I'm making art. I want to start showing, I want to sell my work, I want to be recognized, I want to find my voice. And then they start making other life choices that deprioritize their art. It's not that they didn't have the talent in them, it's not that they didn't have the raw material to make work, they just chose other things and they gave it up. And I've never seen anybody who came out committed, then gave it up, and they're happy happy about it later when they're 45 or 50. Ever. Thing is, maybe there was some fear. Maybe there was some fear about getting that vulnerable. And that's why Misha's death that was the gift of it. Okay, what are you going to do? I have no fear. Tell me you think these shapes are silly and stupid. Tell me, rail at me that I never got any degree from an art school. Say whatever you want, but I'm coming. You know, and here it is. And off we go. So I'd say once you're in, you're in. Because it's worse to know and walk away than just walk away without ever knowing. You know. So anyways, I you know, it's really cool for me to be able to talk about all this. So I really appreciate that. I hope it's helpful to somebody. I don't want to come off that I know everything at all, because I don't at all. I just know what my life has been, and I know how I did it. And I've been very lucky to have some help. Richard Godfrey, Skip Arnold, another person who was very, very important, and Shayna. And you know, here we are.
Here we are. Thank God, and you are such a gift. So thank you. This was amazing. I don't know. I had like showers of goosebumps and tears in my eyes, like alternately.
Got a little choked up myself there.
So grateful. I don't want it to end, but you kind of, there were so many great buttons, and I just want to give it back to you. Just thank you.
The only thing I would end with is that I think art always finds a way. It finds a way, either through us or around us or in us in our society. You know, look at what happened in the inner cities of this country over the last 40 years. You took away art in public schools. You took away the materials. You took away the art classrooms. And they just went right to the street. It always finds a way. It's this magical expression of who we are. And so, you know, surrendering to it is, to me, a noble privilege. And then off you go, right? And you try to be good about it, you try to be good to people, and you try to make sense, and you try to add, and hopefully in the end you do.